Unexpected Joshua, before you conquer the land, you must consecrate my people, circumcise every male, for this generation has not yet sealed my covenant, and until they do, they cannot claim what is theirs. Joshua responded in surprise, Lord, but if we weaken ourselves now, we could be attacked. Trust in me, Joshua, for you will not win by the sword, but by my hand. Joshua obeyed, and at the foot of the hill near the Yord, Israel came to a halt. Every man from the youngest to the oldest was circumcised. An act of obedience, an act of consecration, an act to remind them they were God's people. For day the warriors could not move. They were wounded, vulnerable. If Jericho attacked, it would mean their end. But Jericho did not attack, for the terror of the Lord had fallen upon the city, and in that place God renewed his covenant with Israel, because until that day the people still bore the shame of Egypt, but from that day forward they were free. Then God declared, today I have rolled away the disgrace of Egypt from you. Now you are a holy people. This place shall be called Gilgal, for here I have removed your... They were paralyzed, on the verge of the impossible. The Jordan River roared furiously, its waters overflowing after months of heavy rains. On one side, the ancient promise. On the other, the land where the giants once walked, a territory already given by God, but still guarded by walls as high as the fear that silenced them. Joshua, son of Nun, kept his gaze fixed on the horizon. There were no maps. There were no human strategies. Only the certainty of an ancient word resounding like thunder. I have given you every place where the sole of your foot treads. But how could they go on when everything in front of them screamed destruction? How can we believe when the promised land seemed more like a divine trap? At that moment, the sky began to change. A violent light pierced the clouds. Joshua fell to his knees. He knew it. The war wouldn't be won with swords, but with faith. You're about to enter a forgotten history, where miracles defied natural laws, where cities fell to the sound of trumpets, and where every step was a direct confrontation between doubt and promise. But did everyone cross the river? Did everyone believe until the end? In the desert, silence has another sound. It's the sound of waiting, of repetition, of the promise that never seems to arrive. For 40 years, the people of Israel wandered under a scorching sky and a cracked earth. 40 years of sand in their eyes, wounds on their feet, and doubts in their souls. Men and women grew old with only one destiny in sight, a land they had never seen, but had heard about at every dinner party under makeshift tents. Canaan, the promise. But now, finally, the landscape is beginning to change. The dunes give way to green plains. The dry air is replaced by the humid wind that blows off the Jordan, and there, like a line between two worlds, the river separates despair from hope. They arrived, but arriving isn't the same as entering. Joshua, the new leader, carries more than a name. He carries the legacy of Moses and the burden of an entire generation that died without seeing the fulfillment of the promise. He was there when the Red Sea parted. He saw the fire at Sinai, but now people look to him and not to him, and everyone wants to know, will it be like Moses? Nobody says it out loud, but everyone thinks it, and Joshua did it. At the camp on the banks of the Jordan, the atmosphere is tense. Some kneel in prayer, others simply stare at the river as if waiting for the waters to recede on their own. But Joshua remains silent. He walks toward his tent, bends his knees, and repeats the words he heard on the mountain as a child. Be strong and courageous. Haven't I ordered you? Be strong. Fear exists, but it is fought word by word. That same night, Joshua summons two discreet men. Their eyes reveal the secret. They are spies, as before, as in the time of Moses. But now, the mission is different. It's not about measuring strength, but about recognizing the path to the miracle. Jericho, the walled city, is nearby, and they say no one has ever managed to cross it. The spies depart under cover of darkness. The mission is simple: observe and return. But they don't imagine that a woman, a foreigner, a prostitute, will become a key player in the narrative of the impossible. Rahab. Meanwhile, at camp, Joshua prepares for the unthinkable. At dawn on the third day, he woke up with his heart racing. God spoke to him, not with thunder as with Moses, but clearly, "Tell the priests to take the ark and march toward the water." Joshua gathers the people, more than 600,000 men, not counting women and children. He climbs onto a rock, and the crowd falls silent. It is at that moment that a decision is made: believe or turn back. Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. The phrase spans generations. People murmur to each other. Some smile, others frown. But no one forgets that moment, because that's where the journey begins. The sun has not yet risen when the priests lift up the Ark of the Covenant, the visible presence of the invisible God. A reverent silence fills the camp. They march, and each step toward the Jordan is a cry against logic. The first sandal touches the shore, no problem. The second step, the third. Then the river stops. The waters, which once threatened to swallow anyone who tried to cross, stop as if obeying an invisible command. On the left, a liquid wall forms. On the right, the dry riverbed is revealed. It's as if time has stopped. The Israelites cross, one by one, in silence, in reverence, in awe. In the middle of the bed, Joshua orders, "Let 12 men, one from each tribe, take 12 stones from the river." "Why?" someone asks. "Because one day our children will ask, 'What do these stones mean?' And we will answer, 'The Lord made us pass through here on dry ground.'" They didn't know it, but those stones would be more than a monument. They would be an anchor for the future. A reminder that when everything seems impossible, the promise still remains. When the last feet leave the riverbed, the waters return with force. The Jordan River flows again, as if it had never been interrupted. If it weren't for Israel, nothing would ever be the same. They're now in enemy territory, Canaan, the promised land, and inhabited. Giants, warriors, kingdoms united against them. The miracle of the crossing is just the beginning. Joshua looks at the hills in the distance, and then, as if in answer to a silent question, he sees a figure in front of him, a man, sword drawn, staring. "Are you with us or with our enemies?" A voice answers, "No, but I come as prince of the Lord's army." Joshua bows down. There's no doubt the invisible was now visible, and the war was about to begin. The soil of Canaan looked different, more fertile, yes, but fraught with tension. Every step Israel took in that land was a silent declaration of war. Enemy tribes watched from afar. Messengers ran between kingdoms. Everyone knew something supernatural had happened in the Jordan. And Jericho was shaking. Joshua knew time was short. The people needed to reorganize. Canaan wasn't a desert. It was enemy territory filled with spies, fortresses, and bloodthirsty kings. But what frightened the people wasn't the war. It was God's silence after the journey. Was the miracle of the river just a beginning or a test? The answer would soon come. Joshua was walking alone at dusk, pondering his next steps, when he saw the mysterious figure before him again. The same man, his sword drawn and his eyes like glowing embers. "Take off your sandals, because the place where you are is sacred." Joshua obeyed without hesitation. Then the man, the commander of the Lord's army, revealed the first strategy, and it was anything but conventional. Jericho was considered impregnable. Double walls, experienced soldiers, sealed gates. No land army dared even to surround it, but Joshua received an order that seemed like madness. March around the city once a day for 6 days, in silence. On the 7th day, march 7 times, and then blow the trumpets. Joshua swallowed hard. There was no logic, no catapult, no battering ram, just footsteps and trumpets. Upon returning to the camp, he gathered the priests and captains. He explained the order firmly. Some looked at each other suspiciously, but no one dared to question him out loud. The next day, Israel marched. Their ranks were organized. The ark was in the center. The sound of sandals on the sand and the clinking of armor, but not a word. From the walls the Canaanites watched, first with mockery, then with doubt. By the 3rd day, they were no longer laughing. By the 6th day, some Jericho soldiers were already abandoning their posts. Within the walls, a single woman trembled, not from fear, but from anticipation. Cuervo, she had hidden the spies, and so Joshua promised that her house would be spared. A red cord hung from her window, a sign of the unlikely alliance between faith and grace. Rahab watched Israel's march as if she was seeing her destiny approaching, and she prayed silently. On the 7th day at dawn, something changed. People lined up early. They marched with more intensity. 7 laps. At the end of the 7th, the priests raised their trumpets. Absolute silence filled the air. Then the sound exploded. Long, penetrating notes that seemed to pierce the sky itself. And Joshua cried out, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city!" People screamed, and the ground shook. As if Jericho's foundations were being torn down, the walls began to crack. First tiny cracks, then entire blocks crumbled. A deafening sound enveloped the city. Dust rose to the sky, and where there had been walls, there was now rubble. Jericho had fallen, without a single sword raised. Israel invaded, with clear orders: destroy everything, men, women, animals. An ancient judgment was being carried out upon the Canaanites, but only one house was spared. From Rahab, she and her family were rescued safe and sound from the wreckage, and by faith, Rahab, a prostitute, was grafted into the lineage that would one day bring the Messiah into the world. Joshua watched everything from above, but something weighed heavily on his heart. The victory was complete, but yet why didn't he feel peace? In the silence of the night, while the city was still burning, Joshua walked among the rubble. He stepped on the ashes of palaces. He passed by broken statues, until he heard something: voices, whispers, and a muffled laugh. He followed the sound. Behind a pile of ruins, he saw 2 men arguing in low voices, carrying hidden bags. Weather. He steals, but he doesn't say anything. Joshua returned unseen. The next day he called the leaders together. No one knew what would happen next. "There is sin in the camp," he declared. Silence. Someone disobeyed the order not to take anything for themselves. Their eyes began to meet. And until that's resolved, we can't move forward. This tension would initiate a new phase in the journey, the need for purity, for the promise to continue. But Israel still didn't know what they would face at Ai, or what disobedience would cause on the battlefield. The fire still consumed the remains of Jericho as the Israelite army prepared for its next move. The city of Ai was small, seemingly insignificant, smaller than Jericho, less well protected, an easy target, or so they thought. Joshua, relying on the spy's report, made a pragmatic decision. He would send only part of the army. "Don't tire. Out the entire town, 2,000 or 3,000 men will suffice," the leader said. Confidence was high. The morale was unshakable, but no one knew about the poison hidden beneath the camp, not even Joshua. The Battle of Ai began without warning. The Israelite troops marched confidently, circumnavigating the surrounding countryside. With discipline, but something strange happened. Ai's men reacted with unexpected ferocity. Within minutes, the camp was in chaos. The Israelites' swords fell from their hands. Their shields were shattering. Cries of panic echoed throughout the valley. 36 Israelites were dead. The survivors fled in shame, and Ai remained untouched. Joshua fell face down on the ground. "You tore your clothes." He threw dust over his head. The elders followed him in silence, the silence of someone witnessing the inexplicable. "Why did you bring us across the Jordan, Lord, to deliver us into the hands of the Amorites?" Joshua, the strong leader, now cried out like an orphan before heaven. But the answer came with severity. "Get up! There is sin in the midst of Israel. You can't win until you eliminate what was stolen." A chill ran through the camp. He who had taken the consecrated thing had brought a curse upon all. The next morning a call was heard. All the tribes were to appear, one by one, under the prophetic gaze of the priest Eleazar. Teach 3, then the families, then the houses, until there was one left, the tribe of Judah, Zerah's family, at Carmi's house. The name was spoken aloud, Achan. Joshua approached him. "My son, give glory to the Lord. Tell me what you did." Achan, with his head bowed, murmured, "I saw among the spoils a Babylonian cloak, 200 silver coins, and an ingot of gold. I coveted them and hid them under my tent." The silence that followed was like a collective lament. Joshua nodded. He ordered it to be dug up, and there was the desecrated treasure. In the valley of Achor, Achan, his family, and his possessions were brought before the people. There was no celebration, no relief, only burden. Joshua raised his voice. "You have brought disaster upon Israel. Now the Lord will bring disaster upon you." Stones were thrown one after another. Achan was buried under a mound of judgment, and the valley was given its new name, Valley of Despair. But something changed that day. Israel understood the weight of holiness, and Joshua, now more cautious, sought each step with prayer. This time the Lord spoke clearly. "Don't be afraid. Take everyone with you. This time I will hand Ai over to you." But the strategy would be different. This time it was a hoax. Joshua divided the army. One main group would march openly and visibly. Another, hidden in the hills behind the city, would wait for the right moment. On the appointed day, the Israelites approached. The men of Ai, confident of their previous victory, set out in pursuit, just as Joshua had predicted. Israel deliberately withdrew, feigning fear. That's when Joshua extended his spear. It was the signal. The hidden army invaded Ai from the rear. Open doors, guards absent. By the time Ai's men realized it, their city was already burning. They turned back, and Joshua's army surrounded them on all sides. Oh, he fell, with justice and divine strategy. This time the people managed to take the loot. Silver, gold, cattle. What had previously been prohibited was now permitted. Because everything has a time. Achan's haste revealed his impatient heart. Joshua's obedience revealed a faithful heart. After the victory, Joshua did something unexpected. He stopped the march. He gathered the people. He went up to Mount Ebal. There he ordered an altar to be built, and he read all the law of Moses before the whole congregation, men, women, children, and strangers. Half the people were before Mount Gerizim for the blessing, the other half before Mount Ebal for curses. It was more than a ritual, it was a reminder. The conquest wasn't just sword and blood, it was an alliance, obedience, holiness. Joshua looked at the attentive faces, children with wide eyes, older people with tears in their eyes. For a moment, he saw the people as a family. But time was short. The spies were already bringing new reports. 5 kings rose up for war. Kingdoms that were once divided now united against Israel. The challenge would be greater than Jericho or Ai, and the strategy much more difficult. But that was a topic for the next step. 5 thrones, 5 crowns, 5 restless kings face the same name, Joshua. In the heart of Canaan, news of the fall of Jericho and Ai had spread like wildfire. Messengers didn't just bring reports, they brought fear. Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, called a war meeting. If we don't unite now, they'll hunt us down one by one. Jericho was a fortress, armed, and both fell before the God of Israel. We need to act together. Around the table were the kings of Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon, each with an army, each with pride. Now we are forced to fight side by side. It was the largest coalition ever formed by Canaanite kingdoms. The objective, to attack Gibeon, the city that had betrayed the gods of the land and made an alliance with Israel. Days earlier, Gibeon had done something bold. Dressed as travelers, covered in dust and carrying bags of stale bread, they deceived Joshua. "We come from distant lands. We have heard of the glory of your God. Make a covenant with us." Joshua, without consulting the Lord, made peace. 3 days later, the truth became known. Gibeon was a neighbor, a powerful town, now under Israel's protection. People protested. "We were tricked," but Joshua kept the covenant. "We swear by the name of the Lord. We will not break our word." Now Gibeon was under attack, and Joshua had to make a decision. In the darkness of the night, the messenger arrived, breathless. "Help! All the mountain kings are marching against us. They want to destroy us for having allied with you." Joshua listened. He breathed deeply. It wasn't his battle, but his alliance, and for Joshua, a word given was a word sealed in blood. Without hesitation, he called the army. They would march all night. It was almost 30 kilometers under a pale moon, calloused feet, exhausted bodies, but no one complained. Did you know, a leader's loyalty is demonstrated when he protects even those who make mistakes? And God spoke that morning, "Don't be afraid, Joshua. I will deliver them into your hands. None of them will be able to stand up to you." At dawn, Gibeon was still holding out but was about to fall. It was then that the Israeli soldiers appeared like thunder among the hills. The impact was brutal, the surprise total. The Canaanites, confident of their numerical advantage, were plunged into chaos. Joshua's army was smaller, but he fought with the fervor of one who bears a promise. The 5 kings retreated. Their troops were crumbling. It was the beginning of one of the largest military pursuits ever recorded. Joshua pursued them to Beth Horon, to Azekah, and to Makkedah. And as the soldiers ran, the sky opened up. God fought with Israel. Hailstones heavy as swords fell from the sky. Each one found his target. More died by those celestial stones than by the human sword. But the day was fading. The sun, tired, set. Joshua looked up to heaven, and he did the unthinkable. "Sun, stand still at Gibeon. I'm here, I like it, I'm not from Ajalom." And the universe obeyed. For almost a whole day the light remained. Time stood still so that divine justice could be fulfilled. The book of the righteous would record that day. There was never before or since a day like that when the Lord listened to the voice of a man. The 5 kings defeated, fled and hid in a cave in Makkedah. Joshua ordered, "Seal the entrance with stones. Guards, keep watch." After the battle, he returned to the cave. He ordered the kings to be brought. He threw them to the ground. "Do not be afraid or discouraged," Joshua said to his captains. "This is what the Lord will do to all your enemies who fight against you." And there the 5 kings were killed, their bodies hanging as a sign. He was then thrown back into the cave and permanently sealed. It was a message. Joshua's covenant with Gibeon, though born of deception, had been honored, and all heaven had fought on his side. The southern campaign in Canaan continued unabated. Makkedah fell, then Libnah. Lachish resisted for 2 days before being burned. The king of Gaza tried to help, but was defeated before he could arrive. Eglon, Hebron, Debir, all fell one after another. The same strategy, the same invisible hand supporting Israel. Joshua cleansed southern Canaan with military discipline and divine direction. But before moving forward, he gathered the people. In the silence of the tents, he raised his voice. Remember where we come from slavery, from the desert, from the fiery serpents. Remember that every step here is a conquest that we did not plant. God keeps his promises, but he requires us to follow him with all our hearts. Do you believe it? Comment here. If you were in Joshua's place, would you have trusted him even if you saw armies 5 times his size coming against you? And if you haven't signed up yet, join us. There's more to come. The hardest part hasn't even begun yet. After the resounding victory over the Southern Coalition, Joshua's fame continued to grow. He was no longer just a military leader. He was the instrument of a divine promise that seemed invincible. But with each conquest, the challenges grew, greater, more complex, and the Canaanite resistance fiercer. News of the fall of the 5 kings quickly reached the northern kingdoms. There, in the shadow of the great mountains, a new coalition began to form. 7 different kings, each with their own army, strategies, and ambitions, decided it was time to halt Israel's march. Among them was Jabin, king of Hazor, the greatest and most powerful of them all. His palace, clad in dark stone and with imposing towers, was the seat of a kingdom that prided itself on never having been defeated. Jabin summoned the other 6 kings to a huge tent made of leather and wood in the heart of Hazor. The air was thick with tension and incense smoke. Joshua and his people took our south and crushed our allies. If we don't act, they'll come for us, and it will be the end of everything we've built. That's why we must unite, not out of pride, but for survival. The plan was drawn up. A decisive battle would take place on the plains of Merom, a vast open field ideal for pitched battles and ambushes. Joshua, informed of the enemy mobilization, knew that the greatest test was yet to come. As the Israelite army prepared, the leader held deep prayers and strategic meetings. The weight of responsibility weighed heavily on his chest. The future of a nation was at stake. The sun had barely risen when the troops marched towards Merom, soldiers with shining shields, spears ready, firm hearts. The atmosphere was tense, and the silence between the ranks was almost deafening. Suddenly the air was filled with a deep sound, the sound of trumpets. The enemy army was close. The 2 forces met with a roar that seemed to shatter the sky. It was the confrontation that would decide control of northern Canaan. The battle was intense. Men fell on both sides, dust rose and covered the sun. Joshua, in the middle of the front line, commanded with a firm voice, inspired by God's promise. In the midst of the fighting, an unexpected enemy attack threatened to destabilize the Israeli army. Joshua, however, remained calm. He ordered the mobilization of the reserve, a tactical move that surprised the Canaanites. It seemed the tide was turning, but what no one expected was Joshua's next move. He ordered the army to surround the enemies, blocking their escape routes. Like a snake chasing its prey, the circle was closing. In a decisive maneuver, King Jabin and his allies were defeated and captured. As the prisoners were being led away, Joshua gave a speech to his people. Today it wasn't just our strength that won, but the faith we carried. Whoever follows the word of the Lord will never be alone. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to be in the middle of this battle, watching the future of your nation hang in the balance? Leave your comment below telling us what you would do if you were Joshua. And if you're not yet part of this journey, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's next, the final chapter of this epic achievement. In the following days, Joshua continued to clear northern Canaan. Each city conquered was a victory of faith and strategy. But it wasn't all battle. Hard lessons about leadership, loyalty, and destiny were learned. After the decisive victory at Merom, the way finally seemed open for the complete conquest of the Promised Land. But what had seemed like a triumphant march came at a price, and Joshua soon realized that victory would not be as simple as he had imagined. The remaining cities, though fewer in number, put up a fierce resistance, as if each stone held an ancient secret, a curse protecting its inhabitants. The Israelite army advanced cautiously, aware that every step could mean a deadly trap. However, Joshua wasn't just a warrior, he was a chosen leader guided by a greater mission. His determination radiated through the troops, keeping morale high even when things got tough. One of those cities, Lachish, stood out as a unique challenge. Fortified and well garrisoned, it seemed impossible to take by brute force. After several attempts, Joshua decided to resort to a different strategy, tactical diplomacy combined with faith. In a secret meeting, Joshua met with local leaders and offered them a deal that, though harsh, would preserve lives and bring a new order to Canaan. Not everyone accepted it, and tensions mounted. Meanwhile, stories of mysterious omens and signs began to circulate in the Israelite camp, some interpreted as divine warnings. Uncertainty began to take hold of even the most steadfast minds. In the midst of this scenario, a moral dilemma arises. How far could Joshua go to secure the conquest without losing the essence of the divine promise? Does war justify any sacrifice? This moral duality is reflected not only in the leader, but in every soldier who questions his own convictions. In the final battle for Lachish, an unexpected turn of events shocks everyone. An unexpected ally appears, changing the course of the confrontation and raising questions about loyalty and destiny. Joshua, now more aware of the costs of war, faces a moment of profound reflection. What does it really mean to conquer a land? Is it merely physical possession, or something much greater? This question hangs in the air and makes you think, what would you do if you were in their shoes? How far would you go to keep a promise? If this journey captivates you, don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to follow the final chapter of this epic saga, where we'll reveal Joshua's fate and the future of the people of Israel. So, when the last city falls and the horizon finally seems safe, the narrative closes, but the story leaves doors open for what is to come. The sun was setting over Canaan's last stronghold, its brilliance turning the sky blood red. Joshua stood on a hilltop overlooking the battlefield, where the Israeli troops and the city's defenders were preparing for the final confrontation. It was the decisive moment, the culmination of a long and grueling campaign, which would define the fate of the chosen people. The silence was broken by the shrill sound of trumpets, the signal to advance. The earth seemed to shake with the impact of marching feet, and the clash of weapons echoed across the plains. Joshua led the charge, his voice cutting through the confusion, commanding with firmness and determination. But amidst the chaos, a surprise arrived, a messenger with news no one expected, a betrayal within the Israelite ranks. Someone had facilitated the enemy's entry. The tension became palpable. The battle became a whirlwind of doubts and conflicting emotions. Joshua had to decide quickly, balancing the weight of justice with the urgency of war. The decision he made at that moment would change the course of history, not only of the conquest, but of the soul of his people. And now you're probably wondering, who was the traitor? How will this betrayal affect Israel's future? Will Joshua be able to maintain unity and fulfill his divine mission? We'll only give these answers in the next video, where we'll reveal the secrets behind betrayal, and the true meaning of conquest. Victory came, but not without a cost. The scars of war remained, as did the doubts that accompanied every decision. Joshua, though celebrated as a hero, carried an invisible burden. The burden of leading a people amid promise and uncertainty. The promised land was before them, but the real challenge was just beginning, turning this conquest into a solid, faithful, and just nation. Have you ever considered the price a great achievement exacts, and the fine line between victory and sacrifice? The story of Joshua shows us that every triumph brings with it shadows that must be faced. If you enjoyed this trip, leave a comment with your impressions and questions. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the continuation of this incredible saga. See you in the next episode, where Israel's past and future intertwine in a surprising destiny. Unexpected Joshua, before you conquer the land, you must consecrate my people, circumcise every male, for this generation has not yet sealed my covenant, and until they do, they cannot claim what is theirs. Joshua responded in surprise, Lord, but if we weaken ourselves now, we could be attacked. Trust in me, Joshua, for you will not win by the sword, but by my hand. Joshua obeyed, and at the foot of the hill near the Yord, Israel came to a halt. Every man from the youngest to the oldest was circumcised. An act of obedience, an act of consecration, an act to remind them they were God's people. For day the warriors could not move. They were wounded, vulnerable. If Jericho attacked, it would mean their end. But Jericho did not attack, for the terror of the Lord had fallen upon the city, and in that place God renewed his covenant with Israel, because until that day the people still bore the shame of Egypt, but from that day forward they were free. Then God declared, today I have rolled away the disgrace of Egypt from you. Now you are a holy people. This place shall be called Gilgal, for here I have removed your